count. It's your job.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of Full Press Radio. This is June the 7th, 2021. With you today is myself, Carl, and Stevie Nick.
Okay, we have to open the show with that, though.
Welcome to me forgetting how we start the show.
Yeah, after we've been doing this for how long? But you know what, Carl? I forgive you because we are in the deep end of the playoffs right now. And I think that you in particular feel like your deep end is deeper than the rest of them. Except for maybe the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I would say I feel better about my situation than I would if I was a Jets fan, than if I was a Canes fan. And you know what? That puts me like top 6 in the NHL.
You are not doing too bad. And
if I look at it that way, a top 6 happiest fan base in the NHL, that's okay.
You are not doing too bad. But speaking of fan bases, how great is it watching all these games with fans in the arena?
It's crazy. I mean, Vegas had full arena for their games this week.
I didn't realize how much the game needed this before.
You're saying this piped in fan noise isn't enough for you?
Just didn't cut it. It just didn't cut it. Mostly what I missed was the booing at the refs.
Yeah, they don't pipe that in, do they? For some weird reason.
No, they don't. They really don't.
It's very true. Getting that genuine reaction of it, like it's not just a big hit and whatever NHL wants. When you get upset, you're allowed to get upset. Taunting the other team, chants, all things we missed.
So true. And the energy just rises and falls so much more naturally with the events of the game.
Yeah.
It's good. It's fun. It will be nice for Canadian arenas to fill up a little more.
Yeah, I mean, 250 in Winnipeg, not as bumping. But even that, I mean, even having some amount of fans in the arena helps, even just from the broadcast side.
It really does, and you can tell. And you know, I kind of wonder how these Canadian players are going to react when they travel down south for the next round and they have to play all of a sudden in front of 20, 30,000 people.
And they haven't played in front of fans in over a year.
Yeah, like it's probably going to be a bit of a shock to their system, at least for the first game.
Absolutely. Well, let's start there because the Canadian government actually came out this week and announced a way, like a modified bubble system, that teams could actually cross the border in order to play sports. In light of that, we did see, I mean, the Toronto Blue Jays did extend their time in Buffalo, not fully committing to moving back to Toronto yet with this because leagues still need to sort this out. But do you think, is this going to get us in the next round, as you said, these teams across the border, is this going to get us Canadian teams playing in the Canadian city, or are they still going south of the border for this?
They'll be playing at home. I think that's exactly what this allows for, right?
And that's the reason behind it.
That's the reason behind it. So I think to me, the bigger question is, like, we all knew this was coming, that, you know, the NHL has been lobbying the government for a while to try and make this happen. You know, COVID numbers in the country are finally starting to look better. Vaccination rates are very high. It's not a total stretch that this was going to happen. For me, the bigger thing is how many fans can we get into the buildings to really, you know, make the other teams feel like they're playing at a disadvantage.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we're on our way. Montreal, the likely team that's going to be taking advantage of this, was the first one that let fans into the building, and not like, I mean, Toronto and Winnipeg have let healthcare workers in. But like just normal, regular fans in Montreal. And I would expect that number to increase. Maybe not to full capacity like we're seeing in some of these American cities, but more than nothing.
Yeah, I think as the weeks go on, these numbers will increase. Because I don't know what the intricacies of every province's reopening plans. I know in Ontario, each kind of step is separated by a couple weeks. So depending on how long the Montreal Canadiens or the Winnipeg Jets survive into the playoffs, we could see more and more fans coming into those arenas.
Absolutely. I mean, will Winnipeg surviving past tonight? Is that what we're gonna see?
I mean, I gotta think so, but I've been betting against Montreal these entire playoffs, and they continue to prove me wrong.
Yeah, I know we're gonna talk. We got one more piece of news before we get into that, but I did want to, before I forget it, I saw a stat today. Only 2 teams in the modern playoff format have ever lost or have ever played exactly 8 games in the playoffs, which means they swept round 1 and got swept in round 2. And that was actually the Islanders 2 years ago. They swept the Penguins and then got swept by the Hurricanes. And then I believe the 1993 Buffalo Sabres were the only other team. So
that's a really fun fact, especially because of course it would be Buffalo.
Well, that's a good segue because we got some good Buffalo Sabres news for the team, at least, as they were the big winners in this year's draft lottery.
Yeah, good for them. They can have a third first overall pick on their team. Lots of questions around the team. Before we even get to Buffalo, did you watch this draft lottery?
No.
Carl, I sat down and watched it. It was the most boring piece of television. I couldn't believe I was watching something related to live sports. It was so boring, especially because nothing happened right up until the top 2 picks.
Right. It wasn't until because Seattle
jumped up from 3 to 2.
Yeah.
But before that, it was the first 20 minutes of the show was highlights and then literally just Bill Daly reading the standings.
Right. And that's not thrilling.
It was so boring. Just terrible. But, Seattle jumped up to 2, which I guess isn't that surprising based on the odds, and good for them. And Buffalo, rightfully or wrongfully, ended up with the first overall pick. One other thing on this, one of the highlights of the segment was seeing all the NHL GMs react to nothing.
Were their reactions not live?
They were live. Yeah.
Okay. So just watching
nothing
them be
happened.
Right. Just yep, that's what I expected.
They all just look like, what a waste of my time to be here.
And I'm sure, and they didn't even have to leave their homes.
So true.
They were annoyed that they had to be there, and it probably took them about 45 minutes of their time.
It's so true. I do get a little bit of pleasure out of watching people who believe their jobs is not to be performers, which is essentially what this is, have to be performers. That is fun for me. Well,
and I mean, you're talking about being annoyed at having to do a thing. They didn't even have to put on dress clothes for it. They didn't have to wear a suit. We had guys, I mean, multiple of them, most of them, just in a workout clothes.
Oh yeah.
They just came out of practice.
It's great. I love the way the dress codes are going for anyone who's not a player in the NHL. We got coaches in hoodies. We've got GMs just kind of wearing zip-up Under Armour shirts. It's great.
Let's make it a lot more. I mean, again, you're doing it from your own living room. It takes a little bit of the formality out of it.
Absolutely. I did wish that we had seen either some child running in the background or a dog barking. None of that came up. None of the classic work from home Zoom stuff.
We never see those on these sports things, which is disappointing. I want more pets. That's what I want.
So boring. That would have livened up the show a little bit.
Can Steve Yzerman's dog not run across the screen for a little bit?
He'd put an end to that so fast.
You know what? Maybe he wouldn't.
He's way too serious of a person.
But even he would be bored. And we saw some of those interviews that he did after the fact. He was certainly willing to have a little fun.
I was just going to say, did you see after one of the reporters asked him about the top of the draft, and he turned it around and made that reporter recite who he thought the first 3 picks were going to be.
It was so good. So good.
I love it. I love it. Okay, we should talk about Buffalo again.
So, I mean, we knew one because of that reporter, but two, this is going to be the most difficult draft to draft ever.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, I think so.
So
I mean, most of the junior leagues didn't even play.
Right. You've got guys. I mean, presumptive number one pick Owen Power did just play in the Congratulations Canada on winning gold somehow at the World Championships.
Yeah.
Starting 0-3, getting the gold. Good on them. But he played with them. So, like, we've seen him playing at not the top level, but a high quality level for sure. I mean, any level where Andrew Mangiapane is the MVP is not exactly the top level. Let's be honest. So with him, we know what's there, and I would say, would you agree, Buff? That's probably who Buffalo's taking.
I think so. I think, and again, this is just further proof that this draft is wide open. But I think he's going to be the best player available at number one. And I also think that from a positional standpoint, it makes a lot of sense for them.
Right. And for those that are not well-versed, because there wasn't, what is his position?
He's a defenseman.
Exactly. Right. So, I mean, now they've taken two of those, right? Rasmus Dahlin and him really being able to shore that up.
Yeah. And are they coachless right now? I can't remember.
I want to say yes.
They had an interim
coachless.
head coach. It's coming back to me. Tony Granato is the interim head coach.
Was he?
I think
My
so.
Goodness, that's a mistake.
I think so. And there's been no word yet on if they're going to extend him or not. I just felt that, like...
Don Granato.
Don Granato? What did I say?
Tony.
Who's that?
Another Granato.
Okay. Anyways, Don Granato, thank you for correcting that. I felt that under Ralph Kruger, it was Ralph Kruger, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm questioning all my
no,
names.
you got this.
Okay. And I'm talking specifically about defenseman and Rasmus Dahlin. All of the creativity was squeezed out of his game.
Very much so. Yeah.
He just looked like a body gliding around on the ice, which is essentially what he was, because he just couldn't play the game he was drafted to play.
Yeah, and I want that back for him, because, I mean, when you see defensemen like, and I know I'm going to, but like Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, and I mean, even some of the, like, even seeing what Alex Pietrangelo is doing this play, like seeing some of those very creative defensemen, and then you see a very talented player not using that, it's rough.
It's frustrating from a fan's perspective, but it's incredibly frustrating for the player. And I think it could be damaging too. And that's why I think Buffalo's next choice for a head coach is so important, because he's coming into a fairly young team that has just had its confidence destroyed in the worst way possible.
Yeah, it's not. And we see that repeatedly in teams around the league, right? Where they have that problem. And I think we do need to let these guys have the fun that they need to, right? I mean, if you're going to keep Jack Eichel around, I know that's the biggest question hanging over the Sabres offseason is what happens to Eichel. But if you're going to keep him around, you need to be able to let fun be a thing again.
I thought it was all but decided he's going to be gone.
Well, but where and for what? I mean, I assume at this point, if you listen to social media, it's him for Mitch Marner. So,
yeah, I'm sure Buffalo fans will be much happier with Mitch Marner, and vice versa. That would be the most Toronto Buffalo thing ever.
Hey, that's what we get in hockey, right? We get Patrick Laine for Pierre-Luc Dubois. We get Mitch Marner for Jack Eichel. This is what we get.
I have heard that the Leafs are going to make some pretty big move.
Oh.
That's what the rumors are saying.
Let's see what happens. So, Seattle moving up to 2, which could be fun because at 2, big potential would be Luke Hughes, which would put him, assuming schedules and things go back to normal, which would put him in the same division against his brother Quinn Hughes.
That would be fun. So I didn't even know he was ranked that high.
And that's what I'm looking at, some rankings, checking those out, and this is one of the options, is that Hughes could go at 2 to Seattle, which being able to get a quality, like a good defenseman I feel like you need to go defenseman or center when you have no other depth. And that seems like the best choice for me.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. You know what we're going to have to do, Carl, after the playoffs, before the draft? We're going to have to do a top of the draft rankings episode.
Yeah, maybe get some draft experts in here.
That's a great idea, because I need to learn about this thing, because my Red Wings are picking 6th overall.
And we have no idea. Like, okay, this draft rankings that I'm looking at here, this mock draft, has the Red Wings taking a goaltender at 6.
Oh, what's the guy's name? There's a lot of chatter about that.
Jesper Wallstedt.
That's right. Yeah. I have heard that. I don't know anything about this goalie, but he will apparently be going in the top 10.
Yeah, and you need a goalie.
We do. Sure. I wouldn't put it past Yzerman. He's made some pretty gutsy picks in the last few years, and they're all paying off so far. So he has all of my trust, at least.
Was he the GM at the time of the Vasilevsky pick in Tampa?
He was the GM at the time of the Vasilevsky pick,
which was a first-round pick.
That might have been his first draft in Tampa.
So even bolder.
Yeah.
I like it. All right. Well, let's move on. We got 4 playoff series still happening. Let's start in Montreal and Winnipeg, where we have another suspension to talk about.
Man, we're just going to dive right into the suspension, hey? So this happens at the end of game 1. Winnipeg's down, 3-1, and there's an empty net?
Yeah.
And Jake Evans from Montreal collects the puck behind the Winnipeg net and goes to wrap it around, and Mark Scheifele comes from the opposite blue line with the speed of a freight train and rocks him at the side of the net.
It was full speed.
Full speed. He didn't even start to slow down.
No.
Jake Evans scored on the play. I don't know if he saw Scheifele coming or not, and he was just like, you know what, I'm going to take the goal on this one, or if he was completely blindsided by it. I can't tell from the video.
No, it is difficult to see from that. What is very easy to see, so he was given a charging penalty, and that was the official suspension title that was given, that he was suspended for charging. An entirely unnecessary play from Scheifele, though.
Yeah, I didn't like it at all. He did not even try to play the puck. He just went body the entire way. It looked from a certain angle like his shoulder hit the guy's head too. But he just the way he exploded into him, that does not need to happen.
No, especially, in a game that you have already lost. Scheifele was not having a good game to begin with, right? He was already upset.
They were in his head that game.
Yeah. So he was upset. He was having a rough go of it. And you gotta be better than to know to take that out at the end of a game like that. I get, right? He's like, I'm going to set the tone for next game. I'm setting the tone for game 2. Well, you did set the tone, Mark. And that tone is our number 1 center is gone. And a guy had to go to the hospital. Good for you.
Yeah. Now, we should say Jake Evans is fine. He has not played. I think he has a concussion.
I was going to say, is that what we classify as fine?
Well, it's not like he's on bed rest at the hospital. He didn't spend the night at the hospital.
Right.
Yes, but he does have a concussion. He has not played a game since then.
Right. So he's not in the hospital, but he's not fine.
Yes. Agreed. I misspoke there. Scheifele gets a hearing the next day and a 4-game suspension. Where are you at on this?
I think they nailed it. I think because you look at, again, I'm always going to say that they should be more than what they are, right? They should be larger. But with the current system and the current way that the NHL is doing things, you looked at that Kadri hit and his hit on Justin Falk. And then you see the repeat offenderness being brought up in that Kadri hit. Both of them were dangerous. Both of them were reckless. But Scheifele had no history of suspension. And so I think because of the repeat offender factor for Kadri, I think that Scheifele hit, I was expecting 4 games. It came out to be 4 games. And I think in a playoff and a stretch of time where I think the Department of Player Safety is making a lot of mistakes with Kadri, Reeves, and now this, I think they've gone back to back to back with pretty good suspensions.
I don't know if I agree with the back-to-back-to-back thing, but I do agree with you on the Scheifele. I think they hit the nail on the head with this one. It's kind of a perfect ruling, which we don't get a lot of. To be honest with you, I was even expecting to disagree with you, but I didn't think you would think it was right on. But I agree. I think it was the right amount, and as it's going to turn out, probably it will be Scheifele's last game of the series.
Yeah, very likely. So let's then turn to the series. Montreal played against. Okay, let's start here. Montreal's gonna win.
Yeah, I think so. I can't see Winnipeg coming back and winning 4 straight.
So you said that's likely Scheifele's last game of the series, which means you think that they win in 4 or 5, correct?
Yeah, I think they'll win in 5.
Do you think Winnipeg takes it tonight and then goes on?
I do.
I haven't seen anything from the Jets that makes me think that they can win a game right now.
They have not looked good.
And it's very similar to the same things that we saw in that Toronto series. It's just the same shots from the outside. And we sat here and said we thought Winnipeg was better suited to play a style of game that could beat Montreal with that.
They are being smothered anywhere in the middle of the ice. It's amazing to me how Montreal forces them to the outside.
Absolutely. Well, and they did the same thing to Toronto. Like, it's just,
I know.
Montreal's good at that. I think that's the thing that, as much as we keep questioning it, I think Montreal deserves the credit.
They do deserve the credit for that. But I think here's what's really working for Montreal. Because I think they can play that game 24/7. That's their game. They play it really well. They've got goaltending clicking for them because on the few scoring chances that the Jets are getting, Carey Price is there. And he's standing up tall for the Habs.
Yep.
The other thing they have clicking for them is that going the other way on the few scoring chances they're getting, their goal scorers are scoring goals.
Well, and they are finding, like, some of those young, like Nick Suzuki has, I mean, it's not a full coming out party, but.
Well, we started to see hints of this in the bubble last year.
Yeah.
Remember? He looked amazing last year.
Yeah. And I'm really enjoying watching him playing. I think some of those, like Tyler Toffoli, he'll always get his, but yep. I'm never like fully impressed with his entire game.
That's a fair criticism.
It's like Suzuki, we've seen some goals from Kotkaniemi. It's just Montreal's getting it done right now in not a ton offensively, but as everything they need to do to win games.
Enough though, right? Like it's their key forwards that are putting the pucks in the net, the ones that they need to be scoring. Because we saw in the Leaf series, they didn't get a ton from their defensemen. They got 2 points all series from their defensemen?
That sounds right.
They're getting a little more now in this series. Shea Weber's 3 assists. Jeff Petry's got a couple.
Jeff Petry out for tonight's game, by the way.
Oh, he's out?
Yeah.
From that hand thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
See, he missed a bunch of time in game 3, out for game 4.
That's a big loss for the Habs.
Yeah.
So anyways, what was I saying? Their forwards. They're getting what they need out of their forwards.
Yep. And you're right. Shea Weber has definitely become a factor offensively this round. So that's good to see from Montreal. The thing that I was going to say, there was something I wanted to mention with Montreal, but it has slipped my mind.
This is about Corey Perry and how this guy somehow always finds his way to the net in the playoffs.
Hey, maybe Winnipeg should take a note from Corey Perry. Like, what is he doing to get to the net? And how can we do it?
You know what Winnipeg's going to do? They're going to sign him this offseason.
So true. Yeah, that's very, very, very true. All right, so we got Montreal, Winnipeg on the one side. Let's take a look then at another series that's one game away from being done. Carolina and Tampa. And that game 4 was big.
Do you think it's one game away from being done?
I guess it could be one game. That's what I misspoke on that. It could be one game away from being done. We got decision time.
I mean, it's kind of do or die for the... Well, it's not kind of. It is do or die for the Hurricanes now.
Absolutely.
Why do you think they lost that game 4?
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, a number of reasons. You don't give up that many goals and not have a lot of things go wrong. I think the biggest thing for them in that game was in goaltending and special teams. Mostly special teams, though. 3
power play goals. Like, we said this when we previewed this series, and we're not the only ones who have said this, but that Tampa power play is deadly. You cannot give them all the chances that they're getting.
No, when you have, I mean, being able to shove out Stamkos, Kucherov, Point, Hedman, and then you toss in Alex Killorn because someone else has to be out there. Unreal. That's not a good idea, Carolina.
Yeah. And if they don't score on one opportunity, then you thank your lucky stars and you stay out of the penalty box next time.
Yeah. And in a game with that ended up being a 2-goal game, Carolina, I believe, Carolina had 0 power play goals that game.
Yep. That is correct.
And I do not recall, only 2 opportunities for them. Because Carolina also has a good power play, and Tampa knows it. So they stay out of the box.
You mentioned goaltending. Oh, man. You're going to make me say this guy's name, aren't you? Nedeljkovic.
Nedeljkovic. You nailed it.
Nedeljkovic. Do you think he plays tomorrow?
How many opportunities do you get? I mean, they've already switched to Petr Mrazek in net, right? He played game 3 and 4, if I'm recalling correctly. And I feel like how many times are you just going to flip and flop back and forth? I don't think that they should have switched away from him to begin with. I get that Mrazek won game 3. Nedeljkovic has been playing fine. He has not been the problem with Carolina. I personally don't think. So I think you've got to roll him back in there and go with the guy who got you to the playoffs.
I don't care. I don't think goaltending's an issue with this team. Like, it could be Nedeljkovic or Mrazek. Like, if you look at, I'm just looking at their stats line on Natural Stat Trick right now at 5-on-5. They have the same amount of goals as Tampa in this series. But they're being outscored 12-9. And that's because of the Tampa power play. If they can stay out of the box for a game, I bet you they'll win.
Well, and I mean, 12-9 with, even if you just count last game, right? Those 3 power play goals from Tampa. There it is.
That's it. 50% of Tampa's goals have come on the power play.
6 of the 12. Wow.
It's crazy.
That's far too much.
But that's got to be their main objective, right? Stay out of the box. But it's hard because you can't let up in any way. Like, you can't play softer. You have to stay strong. You have to play the body and play hard against Tampa, but you can't take the penalties.
Yeah, but like, these penalties that they're taking aren't penalties, like hooking calls, right? That's not you playing hard on the body, right?
Being lazy.
That's you getting beat and needing to catch up for it.
True.
So for me, like, I look at what they're doing and it's easy things to clean up. And maybe that lack of trust in net is what's leading to this, right? Like, you know, we've had to make the switch. We don't fully trust that. Because if you're Montreal, for example, and you've got Carey Price in there, if that guy's going to get the corner on me, I'm going to trust that Carey's going to stop the puck. And I'm not
100%.
gonna hook him. I'm not gonna slash him. I'm not gonna trip him. I'm gonna let him go by.
And do you think this distrust in the goaltending has started or gotten worse as a result of the switching of goalies?
Absolutely. I think
it's a good observation.
They've literally said we don't trust goalie number 1, and we didn't trust goalie number 2 to be number 1 originally.
Yeah. It's a good way to get your players to start undermining that trust they have in their goalies.
Absolutely. Speaking of defenseman in Montreal, Eric Gustafsson, with the goal to put Montreal up 1-0.
Wow, that's their first goal from a defenseman all playoffs.
There it is. They did it. And all it took was a deciding game.
The Jets are in trouble.
It was also a power play goal, so it ties in to this whole thing.
Perfect.
So what do you think? Carolina, Tampa, you asked me my thoughts on goaltending. What do you think?
I think they'll probably go back to Nedeljkovic, and I think it'll be fine. I'm calling this series Tampa in 7.
You think they're going to get that many more out of this?
I think they're going to, yes.
I think Carolina wins tomorrow. I think it goes 6.
We shall see. They might lose tomorrow too. I don't know. Out of all the teams that are down right now, this is the one team that I feel has some fight left in them.
Well, I mean, because the other 2 series are tied. So you're comparing Carolina to the winless Winnipeg Jets.
Oh, yeah. This is bad podcast co-hosting right now. I'm trying to stir up some drama here.
Yeah, and I am calling you out for it. That's the drama you stirred up. You stirred up me calling you.
Tampa in 7. Call it. There's my dramatic statement.
Let's take a break. We'll see you on the other side. Do I count us in now?
Yes.
3, 2, 1.
And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. The possibly most dramatic part of our playoffs podcast this year. The Colorado Avalanche and Vegas Golden Knights series is tied 2-2 after a dominating game 1 from Colorado, winning 7-1. They won game 2, barely. They lost game 3 and game 4. Carl, I'm riding high on this drama right now. Give it to me.
Look, the Avalanche, yes, you are correct. They have won 2 games, but they have played as the better team for a game and a half at best. Sure, they were definitively the better team in game number 1. Game 3 and 4, not for a second of those were they the best team.
Not even close.
And half of game number 2, they were not the better team. Like Vegas turned it on halfway through game number 2, and they managed to sneak out a win in overtime. They are lucky to still be in this series. And if they continue to play like they are, I'm not going to be I'll be disappointed when they lose, but I'm not going to be upset because there is zero way right now that they deserve to win this series.
It was kind of interesting because game 1, Vegas was like non-existent. Like they were just coming off of an intense emotional 7-game series with the Wild. They had a day off in between. They were not present for game 1. Game 2, you could start to see them come back to life a little bit, right? That was a bit of a transition game from being non-existent to being the powerhouse that we know they are. You could see them. That was like their drowsy period. You know, the alarm's gone off. You're waking up. You're making your way to the coffee machine. You pour yourself a cup. And then game 3 and 4, they're like 5 to 6 cups of coffee deep, and they are firing at all cylinders.
It is wild watching them play a version of what the Avalanche should be playing. The thing that they're doing better than the Avalanche right now is the Avs are shying away from all kinds of contact and those difficult spots to get to. Vegas has done an incredible job making it hard for the Avalanche to do what they need to do. And they are really, a lot of the Avs goals come from breaks, right? Like they get a Nathan MacKinnon breakaway, or they get, lots of these, right? So Vegas is not letting those happen. And yet they're still able to hold the zone and keep the puck in and not have those turnovers. Sure, that could come quite quickly, but that's one thing that they're doing really well. And then just the passing of the Avalanche needs to be on point, right? When they get the zone, which has been incredibly rare right now, if they get the zone, their passing needs to be able to have, Cale Makar at the point, quarterbacking that system and work on their way through. And that's not happening. One, again, because they can't get the zone, but 2, just they're blocking every lane possible. And the Avs need to make some sort of adjustment to make that happen. As well, zone entries, Avs need to figure out a different way than what they're doing. Because just getting the puck in, Vegas is beating them to every puck. And when the Avs do get there, they're not able to be they're not, using their body well enough to get positioning to get that puck back. And so it feels like Vegas is matching them with speed and then beating them with physicality. And it's been incredibly frustrating to watch. It would be great to have I think a Nazem Kadri would really help in this series. It seems like having a really good, maybe he would get suspended, but having a really good second line center that can, play a physical style of game would be really great right now. And yet 2 more games until he's back.
Which means his playoffs could be over.
This is not the first time you've said that this show. It is the first time that it made me upset.
I guess that's one piece of news from this week too. Gary Bettman upheld the suspension of 8 games on Nazem Kadri.
Of course he did.
Yeah, he's going to support his team. It's now gone to an independent arbitrator, and we've yet to hear at this point whether or not, like at this point, like what is it?
I love that this is how the NHL does it. It's like, yeah, we'll take a week to determine it ourselves, and then we'll send it to someone else who a week later will determine it. And by that time, your suspension's done.
It's so silly and it's so frustrating because you're right. He's the exact kind of player the Avs need to insert into this series. And they're sitting around with their hands under their bums, just waiting. It's so frustrating.
Incredibly. And I mean, there's not a ton of guys like that they could be putting into this lineup. Bowen Byram is one that, I mean, from what I saw from Patrick Nemeth last game, we've both ridden the Patrick Nemeth train this year.
We have.
And it's not good. And
we have.
And so I would personally take that switch to put Byram in for game 5, even just to get like that little bit of spark, right? And he can be that creative type. He's not a big defenseman, but he's able to kind of play that speed game, get him in there, and hopefully make some better choices than what Patrick Nemeth is making right now. So that's one thing I would do going into game number 5. But like, there's not a ton that you're going to do, right? Like, are you going to split up that top line right now? Because they're not really getting it done.
No, they're not. And that's one thing I was going to ask you about. Because that's, I noticed since game 1, they've been suspiciously absent from the score sheet.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would switch it up. I would put, move Rantanen down to the second line, which is kind of their classic, to leave Gabe and MacKinnon together. So leave them together, maybe move Burakovsky up. Brandon Saad is on fire right now. Putting him on that top line could be able to get that spark. I think he's got goals in 5 straight games.
Yeah.
So put him on that top line. It's weird to use Brandon Saad as your spark plug for Nathan MacKinnon, but hey, in game 5, when you've played 1.5 good games this series, and one of them was a week ago, you got to make this happen. You got to change it up.
Dude, it's the playoffs. You try anything. The weirdest things work in the playoffs.
That's how you get some of these great lines where you're like, why is this player on that line? It's because creativity in the playoffs. Chris Kunitz made an entire career to this.
Chris Kunitz played his way onto Team Canada in 2010.
Yeah, just because of blender lines and find something that works.
That's it. So how are you feeling going forward? Have you been do you keep up with the off day stuff, the media, the interviews? Like, how are you feeling about all of this going into game 5? Game 5, by the way, I will say, this is in my opinion, game 5 is the most important game of a series when it's tied 2-2.
No, I mean, I think game 5 is the most important game of any series, right? Because it's either 3-1 and you're going home, or it's tied at 2 and the winner, the loser has to win 2 games in a row.
That's right.
So I think game 5 is the most important game of any series.
So how are you feeling about it?
Not great.
No?
No.
They haven't said or done anything to give you any confidence.
Not really. I mean, we see Jared Bednar's been saying things that they're playing better than us. He was very, very blunt with the media when they were like, what kind of things do you need to change? What wasn't working? And he was like, they were outpacing us. They were better than us. That's it. That's all we need. I'm like, okay, I hope your speech to the guys is a little bit better than that, because that's the kind of result that gets you game 4. So maybe that was a speech to the guys.
Maybe.
They're faster than us. Be fast. But I think we do need to see, I mean, this is what makes, I know that there are, the questions of playoff performers when it comes to players. But I think that's even more of a critical thing when it comes to coaches. I think playoff coaches is a big thing, being able to make those in-series adjustments. And I mean, we didn't really need to make a lot of in-series adjustments against St. Louis, and Jared Bednar's got to wake up right now.
Yeah. Well, I think the entire team's got to wake up, and it starts with him. He's got to find a way to get them going.
Starts with him. I mean, Nathan MacKinnon's got to get going too, right?
Yeah.
He's the best player on this team, and he wants to be a part of this team long term. I want him as a part of this team long term, and he's got to figure out a way to inspire these guys to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as long as he knows that you want him there long term, Carl, I'm sure he'll make it happen.
I think, look, Nate, I know you're listening. And I'm sorry if I come off frustrated, but like, you understand, right? You know that this hasn't been your best games. You didn't want to go back home tied up at 2. But I also know you haven't lost at home yet. And if you keep not losing at home, you're going to win every series all the way to a Stanley Cup. I'm not expecting you to win every game, Nate, but I'm just expecting you to do your best.
You know what, Carl? Yes, you're right. And you know what? We're going to go out there and do it for you. Does he speak with a lisp? Why do I think he speaks with a lisp?
Yeah, he does. He does. I mean, it's not a lisp. Like, there's something there, but not exactly.
It's just a little bit of something for you, Carl.
Not even close.
I have no idea what he sounds like. I just know what his face looks like.
And his face looks like a lisp, apparently.
His face looks like he talks like this a little bit.
Now he's moved to a different country. Like,
is
he's
going higher.
Like, now it sounds like he's from like Germany or like, I don't know where, but like, this guy is from Cole Harbour's. Just do your Sidney Crosby accent and you'll be fine.
Oh, yeah. Bye. It's Newfoundland.
That is.
All right. Podcast notes for next week. Nick, work on your Nathan MacKinnon impersonation.
You just got to watch. Look, when he is the first star in Game 5, you'll see that interview post game. It'll be a great time for you to get some notes.
Perfect. I will study it.
All right. I mean, what's been you've got my thoughts. We're back to sad, Carl. And I told you last week, I said, this is a very rare time that I embrace the joy, and I'm learning to do that because I can let the highs be lower than they ought to be. And so I enjoyed it last week, but now we're right back down to sad Avalanche, Carl.
I think they got a little overconfident with their early series victory. And now that they're facing the Vegas Golden Knights, not just like the Vegas Golden Knights that we saw all year, but the playoff Vegas Golden Knights. They seem to me to be a little shell-shocked. And maybe that's just something you play through. And that's why these series are 7 games and can go either way. But they need to, like, now's the time that they need to come together as a room and say, okay, we got to meet these guys. These guys are going at 110%. We got to meet them up there. And then we got to elevate it even more. This team can do it. Like, they have the talent. And you know what? I think they have the size and the toughness and that physicality aspect that you were talking about. It's there. They just have to meet Vegas with the same intensity that Vegas is putting out. That's what I'll say about it.
And they can, and they have, and they do. But
yeah, I think they were put back into their place a little bit the last couple games. And now they have to realize that, no, you're actually going to have to work for this one and play really hard. And this is probably going to be the toughest series for you all playoffs.
I mean, this is the top 2 teams in the league, right? Like, they literally tied with the top points.
Yeah, you're right.
Absolutely. This is the toughest matchup of the playoffs for anyone. This is probably going to be Vegas's toughest matchup. You think Vegas is going to get shellacked by the Montreal 7-1 in Game 1 next round? No chance.
No, they'll just get shellacked 1-0, 2-1, 3-1
with 8 shots. No, it's
a different kind of shellacking.
But like, one thing, and this did remind me of why my Montreal comment earlier, and we'll see if we have time to get to it after this. But I think, like, we looked at like Max Pacioretty coming back in, he has been unreal for Vegas. I think that's the big difference. If he's in there against Minnesota, probably not going 7.
Agreed.
So that's the thing. I mean, Vegas has gotten that spark, right? You get that spark back of one of your top players coming back. Going to take that next level. What's Colorado going to do to get that spark? There's no one coming back for them. They've got everyone.
So this is who they are.
So you gotta find it internally, and that's what I mean. You got to figure that out. You got to do it.
So are you prepared to make a prediction on the series right now?
Vegas in 6. Let's.
Wow.
Nothing in the same way that I look at what Winnipeg's done this entire series and say that there's nothing that's shown me that they could do this. Colorado let Vegas come back in game 2 and they got away with a win there. Then they came out in game 3 and made very little in adjustments to make up for that. And then rolled back the exact same thing game 4. What are they going to change that's going to do this? Vegas, neither of those games were close. Colorado managed to hold it game 4 a little bit close in the first, and then it blew wide open as the game went on. I have not seen very much. Game 5, being back at home, being outside of, as you said, the full arenas and being there, being in your own full arena, is going to give them a bit of an advantage. And I am curious to know what factor that will have. I haven't really, in this series, the home teams won every game. I haven't really looked at in most of these series, and I'm attempting to quickly do it. Maybe you have a sense on how well home teams have done versus road teams in this playoffs. But
I always think home teams probably perform better. But before this series had started, in my picks in the hockey pool, I submitted Colorado in 6. Now I'm thinking Colorado in 7.
Okay.
I think this team is going to win this series.
What do you think is going to change then?
I think their top line is going to get going. It has to come from these guys.
Oh, hands down. You're not as much as I've been loving Brandon Saw doing his thing. He can't be the only one.
They're going to get going. It's going to click for MacKinnon. This is my prediction in game 5. It's going to click for him. He's going to put up a couple points and they're going to win.
All right. Let's do it.
That's what I think is going to happen. And I can't wait to sleep through it.
What time's that one start at?
I assume it's a late one.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a late one. That is tomorrow's game is 9:00 Eastern time.
It's not as late as the others, but yeah, it's pretty late.
We actually have a reasonable time difference. I mean, they're starting Tampa, Carolina 30 minutes early, so that's getting started at 4:30.
Okay.
And so you got 2.5 hours from the start of one to the end of the other. So you might be able to watch 2 full games in there.
The start times are all over the place, these playoffs.
When I got the notification today that the Islanders in Boston were starting at 4:30.
Yeah. What?
I was confused. I assumed my phone was wrong.
They're all over the place. Anyways, conversation for a different time. We got to get to this last series. The Canadians, by the way, are winning 2-0 at the end of the first.
Yes, they are. Which do we have time for my Habs question?
Yes.
Okay. Habs question. They beat a Toronto Maple Leafs team without John Tavares. They're beating a Winnipeg Jets team without Mark Scheifele. Is this just them getting lucky without having to face the great players on both of these teams, or?
I don't think so. I think this is who the Habs are. They're a good shutdown team. And the bonus here is their young players are actually the players they need the production from are actually producing for them.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to this last series. Tied up at 2, the Islanders currently running away with game number 5. The Nick Sagan most important game of the series.
Yeah, this is a big one for the Islanders. Is it, when you say running away, is it still 5-3?
It is 5-3. Patrice Bergeron just cleared the puck right over the glass, so it is 5-3 with an Islanders power play.
Well, the one thing I'll say about that, and all our listeners will know by the time they're listening to this tomorrow, if any team's going to come back in the final 10 minutes of the third period with 2 goals, it's the Bruins.
And they've done it this series. So yeah, you're absolutely correct.
So that, in my opinion, this game's far from over. Has this been the closest series of the second round? I think so.
Absolutely. I mean, because we've had, even though it is the only one that is tied at 2. Sorry, there's 2 series tied at 2, right? Colorado Vegas and this one, Islanders Bruins. But I mean, we had the 7-1 game in game 1. We had overtime in game 2. Game 3 was a little close. And then game 4 obviously was not. Yeah, and there's 2 games in that series that weren't close. Yeah, this is for sure the closest series we've had.
I think so. And it's making it very hard for me to make a decision or a call one way or another how this thing's going to fall. I mean, my original prediction was Boston in 5.
That ship has sailed.
That ship has sailed. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to it could go either way. I wouldn't be surprised if either team won at this point.
This is the difference for me. We got Matt Barzal hot streak happening, goals in 3 games in a row.
Huge for New York.
The Boston, and their top line is always going to produce. This seems like the one line in the league that you never have to question if they're going to be showing up.
Totally. And they showed up. What was the game? I guess it was game 3. Was that the overtime game?
Yes.
What did you make of that goal? That Brad Marchand, basically bottom of the circle goal.
No way that it should have gone in. And yet,
bad goal.
And yet it did.
That was a bad goal in a game that the Islanders otherwise should have won.
Yeah.
So,
but and yet, I mean, we have talked about the Islanders goaltending choices in the past, going back with Semyon Varlamov this game after, I believe, what he's now faced 3 games in a row. I think this is his 3rd game. Yeah, 3rd game. So it looks like this is his net to lose.
Well, I mean, if there's any team that can chase Semyon Varlamov out of his net, it's the Bruins. I mean, I'm just looking at their Corsi comparison, which is shot attempts at 5-on-5. Like, the Bruins they're controlling the pace of these games.
I mean, even this one, right? Like,
yeah.
And I don't know shot attempts in this game, but like just normal shots, they're doubling up the Islanders, and yet the Islanders have 2 more goals than them. Which is also why Tuukka Rask is on the bench.
Yeah. Fair enough. So I don't know. I don't really want to bet against the Bruins at this point. I find I change my tune on the Islanders all the time. Like, some weeks I'll say they're a fun team to watch, and other weeks I'll say they're a boring team to watch. I think I'm on the boring train right now. But the Matt Barzal heater's definitely been fun.
Yeah. And Matt Barzal is that's what makes this team fun, right? Is the Matt Barzal-esque style of play. When you've got a Casey Cizikas breakaway goal is not what we're here for. I mean, breakaway goals are fine, but like, come on.
Not from him. No, nobody wants that.
No. So, I mean, I think the Islanders, with them being up now 3-2, if they finish this game out, I'm assuming they finish this out. Even though, like you said, Bruins are pressing, they'll probably finish this game with over 50 shots on net, which is unreal.
Man.
So
crazy.
It's very probable that they could get 2 in that stretch. But for me, I think that this is going to be up 3-2 Islanders, and then I think they can win one out of the next 2 games, absolutely.
So you're taking Isles.
Taking Isles in 7.
Taking Bruins in 7.
Is this our first disagreement of the show? No, I said Vegas.
No, you said Vegas. Although I don't think you really believe that. I think you're setting yourself up to not feel too bad if your team loses.
Look, I don't want to hurt. I don't.
It's okay, Carl. We're not going to hurt you much longer.
Yeah, because they're going to be eliminated by Thursday.
And then you can rest.
And then I can just enjoy it. Game 7 would be, oh my goodness. You can watch Game 7 if it happens. Do you want to know what they've scheduled for Game 7?
Yes.
Game 7 is 11 a.m. Saturday morning.
11 a.m. your time?
Yeah. So 1 p.m. Eastern time.
But isn't that...
Saturday.
Is that... Wait, where is that? In Colorado?
Is in Colorado. So that is an 11 a.m. I believe it's the same time zone.
So that's an 11 a.m. start?
That's an 11 a.m. start. You want to wake up and play a Game 7, friends? Because we're doing it. What are you thinking, NHL?
I don't understand this league sometimes. I truly don't.
Because there's... Maybe that'll change. I'm thinking that's going to change. When I actually go... So that was on the Avalanche schedule page. When I actually go, it is currently announced as TBA for a time, which seems more likely. So I retract my frustration about an 11, but do know that if anyone has to play even a 1 o'clock start for Game 7,
yeah, that'd be brutal.
Especially since,
go ahead.
Especially since they're up against the other game that would be happening is Tampa, Carolina, and that's not going to 7. I know you said it was, but I don't think it is.
Maybe it will, but if it doesn't, they'll get that primetime slot. Assuming they go to 7.
Yeah.
Which they will.
If Avalanche want to win, they're probably going to need 7.
I've got both of those series going 7 games. Therefore, they will go 7 games.
What's the criteria for the pool this go around for round 2?
Oh, man, it's garbage. So I shouldn't say that. He's such a generous man. You have to get 3 out of 4 series winners correct.
Okay.
To get $50.
Okay.
Then if you guess the number of games right, it's $50 per series.
So,
but to collect any money at all, you have to get 3 out of 4 series winners right.
That seems fair. I mean, that's interesting. So you could get, what if you get on the 4th series that you didn't get the winner right, you get the number of games. Do you get a payout on that one?
No.
Okay.
No, we've tried all of these tricks in the past. He's caught on to them. Yeah. So far I'm alive. Like Winnipeg's going to really mess me up, but I could get Boston. I could get Tampa and I could get Colorado still. I
was going to say, you likely will get Tampa.
Yes.
Boston, Colorado is going to be a little bit harder. Well, who do you think? Here's an interesting question because this will be my barometer. I almost said Boston has a better chance of winning this series than Colorado. And Boston's literally, I believe, going to be down 3 games to 2. Who do you think has an easier shot at winning the series, Boston or Colorado?
I think Boston has a better chance of winning their series than Colorado. I agree with you.
Okay. Even being down a game.
Yes.
Boston has that's so see.
But Vegas is so good. But Colorado's so good. Like we're talking about 2 teams in a whole other tier than Boston Islanders.
Yeah, I mean, especially the winner of this series is to play Montreal.
Yeah.
And I know that we've been poo-pooing Montreal repeatedly and been made a fool, but I'm going to do it again. I'm not giving up.
No, me neither. I got to stand my ground now.
Absolutely. All right.
We can't admit failure.
Well, Nick, we've got this game to finish up. We've got Montreal, Winnipeg tonight. that series could be done. We could be wrapping up the North Division next time and just waiting for Montreal to travel down south. I mean, I guess with all the other games, I expect we're done. This is the last time we talk about Winnipeg in a preview sense.
I think so. Yeah.
So congratulations, Winnipeg. Great season. We'll be looking at that next week. We'll be back like we are every Monday night. Next week, same as always. So you can find more about the show at thefourthlinepodcast.com. You can play high-low sticking, where there's that Boston goal you were talking about. High-low sticking on Twitter at Fourth Line Podcast. You pick for the game of the day, which most days have one, some have two, and podcast days have none. We're busy doing this. Head on over there. Pick the over-under. Do you think the game will be over or under the line? Most of them are 5.5. I told you, I'm from the future. You can play that. Let us know. We'll be handing out prizes from the amazing folks at the Store Next Door. Great hockey-based products that they got over there. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to shows. We are there for you. If this is your first time listening, thank you very much for tuning in. And until next week,
it's time for us to wrap up another Fourth Line show. I know what you're thinking. You don't want us to go. There's nothing more dramatic than playoff hockey. To keep the drama going, let's join Carl in the Rockies. And hey guys, you can join me too. I'll be there playing. You can come watch me play. Okay, thanks. Bye.
It's close.